Carnegie Hall in New York City, the home of the world's greatest musical events. Today's event is one in a series of New York Philharmonic Young People's Concerts under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein.
And here is Mr. Bernstein.
Hello again, all my dear young friends. Today's program is going to be very different from the ones we usually give. You see, ordinarily, we take a subject and talk about it with a lot of musical examples by the orchestra. As for instance, last time the subject was the music of Mahler, and the next time our subject is going to be unusual musical instruments. But today, we're going to have mostly music and almost no talk at all, which should please a lot of you who don't like to be lectured to in the first place. But I hope it may disappoint some others of you. But anyway, let me talk at least enough to tell you why this program is going to be different. As you must know, a conductor's life is not at all just a matter of getting up and conducting rehearsals and concerts. That's hard enough, but that's pie compared to all the other things he has to do, which I won't go into right now. But one of these many things he does is to spend hours listening to people who want to play or sing with his orchestra. And that brings me to the point of today's concert. Among all the hundreds of pianists and singers and violinists and cellists and kazoo players and everything else that I've heard over the years, there have been some very gifted ones, of course. And recently, there's been a specially gifted crop of young ones, mostly in their teens. This I find wonderfully exciting, especially because with all the talk that goes on nowadays about teenagers and their problems and delinquents and gangs and all that, it's marvelous to see how many teenagers are serious, hard-working kids who are excited about music and find it fun. Well, this collection of talented young performers began to grow so big that I wondered how I could give some of them a chance to perform with our orchestra. And then I had the idea of the perfect place for them to be presented, right here on these young people's concerts in Carnegie Hall, where they can be seen and heard by other young people and by thousands of others here and by millions more on television. Now, just to make it a real festival of youth, we're going to hear some young conductors, too. See, here at the Philharmonic, we don't have the usual assistant conductor, but instead we have several assistant conductors who are young men chosen for their special conducting talent. They change every year, and they come from all over the country and from all over the world, in fact. Of course, they're not exactly teenagers, but a young conductor has to be a little older than a young pianist or a young violinist, because conducting takes so many years of experience and requires a certain grown-up authority. So even though they're already out of their teens, we can still safely call them young conductors. Here comes our first youthful genius. He plays the cello, and he plays it in a way I wish I could play the cello. His name is Daniel Dom. Daniel is 15 years old, and he comes from the land of Israel. He's going to play the first movement of Dvorak's Concerto in B minor, a very difficult piece, by the way, but I heard him play it, and I couldn't believe my ears. It was so beautiful and grown up. The orchestra part, which is also quite difficult, will be conducted by Kenneth Schermerhorn, one of our gifted young assistant conductors. He comes from Schenectady. And as for me, I'm just going to sit down right here and enjoy the music, as I'm sure you will too. Now we are ready for our second team of young geniuses. This time our soloist is going to be a violinist by the name of Barry Finclair. Barry is only 14 years old, comes from New York City, and, well, he's just marvelous. And the orchestra this time will be under the direction of Stefan Mengelberg. Mr. Mengelberg came to this country originally before the war from Germany and is now, of course, an American citizen. Together, our two young men will play the brilliant final movement of the Wieniawski Concerto in D minor. This is a sort of wild gypsy music which Wieniawski has managed to tame somehow into a breathtaking concert piece. It's no easy trick to toss this one off, especially at the age of 14, but I have no worries about Master Finclair. Here goes. They are wonderful, aren't they? Now, for this last piece we're going to play, you'll just have to pretend that I'm young too. As a matter of strict record, it's not too long ago since I was 15 myself, only 25 years or so. But there'll be plenty of youngness in this piece anyway, since the piece we're about to play is Prokofiev's famous musical story, Peter and the Wolf, which is about the young and for the young. Besides, our narrator, that is the person who will tell you the story as we go along, is 9 years old, count them, which more than makes up for my advanced age. Her name is Miss Alexandra Wager, and she is an actress who is rapidly becoming very well known. Alexandra. Everything all right? Mm-hmm. Now, usually before this piece begins, the narrator is supposed to explain how each person or animal in the story is described by a certain instrument of the orchestra. But of course, you're all so sophisticated, I'm sure you know all that already. You're such musical experts by now. At least I hope you are. I see some doubtful faces. How about let's try you out? Let's just see. Do you know what character these 3 horns represent? Say it. Right. Oh, yes, I can see. You do know it. What is this oboe? Right, the duck. Right again. And now what about the flute? You're batting 1,000. The bird, right. Now who's this low character in the clarinet? The cat. I didn't have to play more than 3 notes of that one. Then there are those famous drum beats. What did you say? Right. The hunters shooting their guns. And what's that lumbering old... I won't tell you the instrument because that'll give it away. Right, the grandfather, and the instrument is the bassoon. My, you really do know this piece, don't you? Well, that's all of them. Except, wait, I left out the most important one, didn't I? Absolutely correct. And now, Miss Wager, it is your show.
Early one morning, Peter opened the gate and went in a big green meadow. Of a big tree sat a little bird, Peter's friend. All is quiet, chirped the little bird gaily. Yes, all was quiet. Even the pond was still. Soon a duck came waddling around. She was glad that Peter had not closed the gate and decided to take a nice swim in the deep pond in the meadow. Seeing the duck, the little bird flew down upon the grass, settled next to the duck, and shrugged her shoulders. "What kind of bird are you if you can't fly?" said she. To this the duck replied, "What kind of bird are you if you can't swim?" and dived into the pond. They argued and argued, the duck swimming in the pond, the little bird hopping along the shore. Suddenly, something caught Peter's attention. He noticed a cat crawling through the grass. The cat thought, "The bird is busy arguing. I'll just grab her." Stealthily, she crept toward her on velvet paws. "Look out!" shouted Peter, and the bird immediately flew up into the tree. While the duck quacked angrily at the cat. From the middle of the pond, the cat crawled around the tree and thought, "Is it worth climbing up so high? By the time I get there, the bird will have flown away." Then Grandpa came out. He was angry because Peter had gone to the meadow. "It is a dangerous place," he said. "If a wolf should come out of the forest, then what would you do?" Peter paid no attention to Grandfather's words. Boys such as he are not afraid of wolves. mother took Peter by the hand, led him home, and locked the gate. No sooner had Peter gone than a big gray wolf did come out of the forest. In a twinkling, that cat climbed up the tree. The duck quacked, and in her excitement jumped out of the pond. But no matter how hard the duck tried to run, she couldn't escape the wolf. He was getting nearer, nearer, catching up with her. And then he got her, and with one gulp swallowed her. And now, this is how things stood. The cat was sitting on one branch. The bird was sitting on another branch. Not too close to the cat. And the wolf walked around and around the tree, looking at them with greedy eyes. In the meantime, Peter, without the slightest fear, stood behind the closed gate, watching all that was going on. Suddenly, he got an idea. He ran home, took a strong rope, and climbed up over the high stone wall. One of the branches of the tree, around which which the wolf was walking stretched out over the wall. Grabbing hold of the branch, Peter lightly climbed over onto the tree. Peter said to the bird, "Fly down and circle around the wolf's head. Only take care he doesn't catch you." The bird almost touched the wolf's head with her wings. The wolf snapped at her angrily from this side and that. How the bird did tease the wolf, how he wanted to catch her. But the bird was clever and the wolf simply couldn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Peter made a lasso and carefully letting it down, caught the wolf by the tail and pulled with all his might. Feeling himself caught, the wolf began to jump wildly, trying to get loose. But Peter tied the other end of the rope to the tree. And the wolf's jumping only made the rope around his tail tighter. Just then, the hunters came out of the woods. They were following the wolf's trail and shooting as they went. Sitting in the tree said, "Don't shoot. Birdie and I have already caught the wolf. Now help us take him to the zoo." this is how things stood now. Imagine the triumphal procession. At the head, in front of everyone else, came Peter. After him came the hunters, leading the wolf. And winding up the parade, Grandfather and the cat. Grandfather tossed his head and said grumpily, "Well, and if Peter hadn't caught the wolf, what then?" Above them flew Birdie, chirping merrily. My, what fine ones we are, Peter and I. Look what we have caught. And if you would listen very carefully, you could hear the duck quacking in the wolf's belly, because the wolf, in his hurry, had swallowed her alive.
Now, one more word before we part. I want to tell you that all my talk over the past years on all these programs about kazoos and kazoo players is not just a joke. Our next program, as I told you before, is going to be about strange and unusual musical instruments of the past and the present, and even of the future. And one of the pieces we're going to play is, believe it or not, a concerto for kazoo. So put that in your kazoo and smoke it. I'll see you then.
This is the second in a series of 4 concerts by the New York Philharmonic under the musical direction of Leonard Bernstein. The next concert in the Young People series will be presented 3 weeks from today on Sunday, March 27th. At that time, Mr. Bernstein's subject will be unusual instruments of the past, present, and future. These concerts are brought to you by the Shell Oil Company. This program was recorded at Carnegie Hall in New York City.